Everybody breathe. Whoops. Supposed to say that before the recording. Anyway, it's the 27th of February, and you are in the Gathering Convergence Room, home of the Heal the Earth Initiative and the Beacon Library. And today is Tuesday, the Keeper of the Flame Beacon, which is our Indigenous teaching platform with Union of Nations and the New Earth Grandmothers. And we have the Director of Union of Nations with us, Grandmother Gail Thomas. Hello, Gail.
Hey, Shonda. Hey, everybody. Still good night. All for being
Baby, your
here.
audio's cutting out. Um, Hang on.
Nothing I can do. Maybe. Okay, welcome again, everybody. And hoping that my sound is a little better and we can sing ourselves into this gathering. We indigenize our gatherings by opening with a song. And so I'd love to open with calling in our ancestors. Let's do that together, much as we can. This is from the indigenous people of Dagaroo, passed to me by Melodoma Stome. And I encourage everybody to start gatherings with this song that is from where the DNA says we all came from in this wave of humans. We do share ancestors when we reach back to the beginning of this wave of humans. So this calls them into any gathering when we sing this song. So let's do that together as much as we can. Horror's coming in. Horror's coming in. Horror's coming in. Horror's coming in. Horror mommy. Horror mommy. Horror mommy. Earth's coming in. Earth's coming in. Earth's coming in. Earth's coming in. And mama is. And mama is. And mama is. Thank you all for singing along and sharing ancestry, sharing this time together, and sharing our hearts with each other. We have a beautiful tarot card today called Fine-Tuning Intuition. And so that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the indigenous understanding of what fine-tunes our intuition. And the first thing that comes to mind is that's why we don't cut our hair. There's not scientific indigenous studies of our ways unless colonizers have done them, but that's what happened with this one when the military kept recruiting the best native trackers that they could find for their wars. And they took these native men with long hair in our indigenous ways into their boot camp and cut their hair and made them all look alike and stopped thinking. And they lost their tracking abilities. And so the military started trying to figure out what's going on that these guys are so good until they join in this force and then they lose their abilities. And it turns out that it's because they cut off their hair and put them in colonizer garb and took away their ability to think. Only certain people are allowed to think. Most of them are not, even if they really needed and valuable in the environment, they're still not allowed to think or to act or to do what comes naturally in their ancestral ways, to bring in their ancestors and to join with their ancestors. And it's our understanding that every time we cut a single hair, it takes 3 years for full intuition abilities to return to that single hair. And think of how many have, how many hairs we have, and is it worth, cutting those hairs that really alter our ability to tap into our intuition? And also, it takes a lot of experience with intuition to develop the discernment, recognize it in its truest purity. The thing about intuition is that it's generally either all right or all wrong. There's not a lot of middle ground. And it takes a lot of experience to recognize the all wrong intuitive information that comes to us and to finely tune the intuition so that we easily recognize the all right from the all wrong. Now, my experience with that has been, if I'm not thinking about something, if I'm not engaged in linear thinking, like I'll give you the example that a lot of us do every day. We go to the refrigerator and open the door and stand there and we think, okay, what am I going to eat now? And yeah, maybe spinach just pops out of nowhere, you know? But that's not it. That's not intuition. That's linear thinking in disguise. You just thought of spinach. If you're not looking at the refrigerator and you're not hungry and you're just wandering around in the yard with the dog, and all of a sudden you know you're going to go in the house and eat some spinach, that's intuition. Comes out of the blue, comes unsolicited, unannounced, unexpected, no effort involved, just listening and paying attention and being present and recognizing that we're being helped by whatever you understand that help coming from. We understand it as our helpers that we have a relationship with, our spirit helpers that we develop a relationship with. We come into the world with these helpers as children. And then somewhere between 13 and 16, when we step into our power with those hormones and our body that represent power and into this world, that's the true power. That's the divine nature in that process of supporting life and procreating. That's stepping into our power. And we only do this after we've gone through that developmental stage at 10 or 11 of saying, I'm not you, to our parents. That takes a while. That's a tough one, because they've conditioned us and they want the best for us and they want to guide us and show us and tell us the way that worked for them. But we have to get through that developmental stage of I'm not you before we can be who we truly came here to be and work willingly with those helpers that we came in with. And they're there for us when it's life and death, always. You know, when we really need to preserve life, they're there for us, even if we don't establish and connect and honor our relationship, they're going to be there for us. But there's so much more when we make that choice to continue working in traditional native ways with our spirit helpers. There is so much more to life and so much more to why we're here and what we came here to do. We have those relationships with our power animals in the lower realms and with our teachers in the higher realms. And sometimes we can discern, you know, this thing colonizers call intuition is actually that kind of help. And we recognize the relationship because our helpers have gifts just like we do. They're not all knowing, all abstract, higher beingness and all that stuff and all that substitute words. They're just as specific as we are in the gifts that we share, coming into community, coming into relationship. And we know who to ask for what we need because we know what their gifts are. And that's relationship. I needed this. I asked that person. And this is what happened. And it gets beautiful. It brings the numinous back into life and it brings us back into our meaning and our purpose in life. And it's so much easier to do that when we are in community with each other, like we are here, and with the scene and the world coming together. That's the connection between the lower realms where the power animals sit and help us and the higher realms where the teachers sit and help us. And we are on the middle realm. 2 is duality and functioning in opposites. And it takes a third thing to bring them together. And when that third thing arises, it goes into the sacred number of 4. Again, sacredness shared in many teachings by many peoples, mostly indigenous, because that's the original instructions we came in with. And that things flow and everything don't need to worry or wonder or any of that, to know, to have that true knowing and into it's not thinking, it's not, you know, talking and talking and talking, and it's not most of the things that make up the world we're in today. It's more into the quantum physics realm and the unity of all life, connecting spirit to spirit. That's what creates the highest potential and the right use of power and the recognition of true power to preserve life and procreate and continue as this wave of humans, which we're at the point where we have to do this. We are being held accountable for all of our idiocy in this wave of humans. I'm so sad to say. It's time to change. It's time to go back to those life. Life for all sentient beings, all beings. Plant spirits, mineral spirits, water, earth, air, and fire, the animals that are teaching us now, the stones and the mineral teachings and the fire purification that we're all building relationship within our gatherings for our fourth Sundays and whatever day it gets changed to, as it needs to change sometimes. But that's why we keep building those into the teachings of relationship with the elements. And when this fire has purified enough and united us enough, we'll move on to the other elements. I'm already creating journey songs for all four elements to help us move into those energies and bring balance into our lives and into our ways. And if we are just starting to tiptoe into that world and are still working in the Newtonian linear thinking ways, there are some things that Carl Jung came up with from our indigenous medicine ways, which is the foundation of the present day psychology system in allopathic medicine. He was able to make those transitions in a way that he could turn it into the empirical science that the Western medical system would accept. And so he did that by identifying our four functions of our personality. We'll have different dominants and different numbers that make us unique. But there's a practice we can do when we're really uncentered and ungrounded and things around on the circumference of the circle with that noun-based world dominance, dominance culture that we're in. We can sit down and take out a piece of paper and our colored pencils or our crayons or whatever we have. We can take a lid from the pot on the stove and draw a circle on a piece of paper. And then we can close our eyes and see what we see. What we normally look for, because we don't notice unless we're looking, is a symbol, an image, a color, a form, a shape. Sometimes it's an object, but linear thinking is more object-oriented and object relations than the ways that I'm sharing with you today. That's when we objectify people and use them for this purpose or that purpose in linear thinking and dominance culture. We're talking about something different. We're talking about just closing our eyes and looking kind of at the other side of our, the back of our eyelids and seeing what we see. There's something there. And that's where we begin. We put that shape, color, form, symbol, whatever it is, we just put it in the circle that we just drew. And we do that 4 times. And we end up with the quadrants of the circle that are our medicine wheels. And so when we work this in the functional ways that Carl Jung tied into our personality, we see where we put things and we draw that medicine wheel cross, which is more of an X. And it separates the circle of wholeness into 4 quadrants. And so we've entered the numinous sacred when we do that. Okay, when we finish our 4 times, we can look at those 4 quadrants in that circle. And we start in the lower right quadrant because that's where our senses are. Our eyes, ears, nose, taste. It goes into the actual instincts that truly keep us alive. The awareness that we cultivate when we do these practices that preserve life, all life around us. The instincts are first that urge to action and our creativity. and our self-reflection. And then sex and hunger. If you need to remember it, it spells crash. And that's what we do when we don't pay attention to these things. We crash. So creativity, urge to action, then sex and hunger. That's what our senses do, and that's what keeps us alive. So we look into that lower bottom right quadrant and we see what we've put there. And we know that it's telling us something. It's telling us what is in our life right now. What is it? What do we see? What do we sense? What do we hear? What do we smell? What do we taste? What is it? And that's where we start. It's a color that represents the archetypes. It's a shape, it's a form, it's a symbol, it's a message. It's a connection with the numinous and the meaningful of life. A step away from dominant culture into the inner world and the inner aspects that we need to integrate within our personality to be at our highest and best. So we move up to the next quadrant on the upper right side. That's when we start to think. That's when we use our temporary mind that's associated with this body. And we go, what it is. Or if we're more dominant culture, we go, what is it? You know, more Newtonian. What is it telling me? What is it about? You know, we value the information that it's bringing when we do that. And we just start to think. We don't get all carried away and dominated by thinking like this culture is, you know, this Newtonian aspect of cause and effect, and I can think and manifest and all this stuff. You know, that little mind is the ego. And when we regard it as such and recognize it as such, then ego is primarily based on identity until we can see through identity to the true awareness. When we're in a natural disaster, it's our senses and what do we do? All life around us, you know, when there's an earthquake, the guy downtown LA in his big business suit, who usually doesn't get face, where if his eyes see a hand sticking out of the rubble, he's going to forget about that pricey suit and all that identity that he carries in dominance culture. And he's going to naturally, instinctively support life. He's going to jump down in the dirt and pull that hand out of there if he possibly can. That's awareness, as opposed to identity of the big car, the big house, the fancy suit, the don't get dirty culture that we live in. Okay, so when we get that thinking in balance and in its proper place of these four quadrants, it's no bigger or better than the other four. It takes all four to stay alive. So there's no hierarchy here in this circle either. We're all equals. And so we move from the beginning of that thinking function. What do I value of this information that I've been given by my senses? We move into the bottom left quadrant, which is feeling function that says, hey, do I like this? Maybe not. If I don't like it, I don't do it. We value that equally with the thinking function. Okay, the feeling whether we like something or not. And we value that information equally with the, oh, well, this is not so, you know, the thinking function that says, well, this is okay. I can do this and I can do that. And I can objectify and use this person or this thing in this way and that way. The feeling function just says, can I establish a relationship that's valuable here? Do I like it or do I not like it? And from there, when we've equalized those values, we can move to intuition. which is the upper left quadrant of our circle. And it tells us, what is this bringing into my life? What is this gift that's appearing for me right now? What is this opportunity? What is the best choice that I can make for this purpose, for the good of all, for the spirit of all life equally, without hierarchy, without any of the dominance culture ways? Can we unlearn those? Can we reach back to these original instructions that kept our ancestors alive and return the world to circles? Return the world to these circles that make us all equal and in balance, and in a walk that's meaningful and purposeful and action-based, verb-based, where it's not the talk, it's the actions that really matter. And we can choose those actions. We have to recognize that we cannot choose the outcome. This is very deep Soto Zen teaching that training for my Soto Zen vows that I took in 2001. We can choose, but we don't know the outcome, but we are responsible for the outcomes of our choices. We have to take accountability for the choices that we make and the outcomes that we get from those choices. We have to see our limits, what we need to learn, grow, how we can really develop these 4 functions that we identified in the that we just learned how to call when we're all discombobulated and needing to get centered. This is a tool, this is a practice that is available for us to return to center. And centered is verb-based. It's the verb-based language that sits at the hub. It's the nouns that fly around on the outside of the circle and don't really get much done. Sometimes they just fly right off the circle. So anytime we can return to our own center and the verb-based actions in the center of the hub is at our highest and best. And so when we can recognize these 4 functions that we just talked about and their gifts that they contribute to our life, and what is appropriate choice, right place and time. There's no good and bad. It's all in balance in the right place and time. And that is the choice for the highest and best. So it starts with the senses, it moves. Like it or not, and then it goes to intuition. So this is fun. And then watching those, we can identify the all right or the all wrong intuitive hits that we get. And we can identify the relationship with our spirit helpers that this help is coming from. And that's relationship. That's building relationship with our own 4 functions and our personality, and with all life around us, spirit to spirit, with all life. Accountability, recognition, equals in the circle when all is centered and in balance. I'm going to open up for questions or comments of sharing experiences that you've had that tie into these teachings, or topic of fine tuning intuition or cutting your hair or, anything that, hey, welcome to.
Yeah, yes, I would like to ask you, do you ever trim your hair? Do you touch it at all?
I do. Unfortunately, I do. I have some that I don't, but I have some that I do. So it's balanced. I'd like to be able to not ever cut my hair again, and I'm probably a year into that. But
And is that because you find split ends, or is it because you just were trying to shape it?
I used to have so much hair that it was like a blanket over my head, and
Mm,
I just could not handle it. It would take, hours and hours to dry,
mm.
and it was just heavy and hard. And when I got the spinal cord compression at the back of my neck, that's one of the
Oh,
things I
okay.
did.
It's really heavy then.
Right. Yeah. And was just able to do what I could do. I
Mm,
had to do what I had to do. But I'm coming back to the point, and my hair's thin enough now, thanks to the croning that
mm,
that crone transition, has certainly lightened my load, and I cut less hair, and I'm
mm,
able to handle it better. Yeah, but thank you, Lynn, for that question.
mm.
Anybody
Yes,
else?
red clover, Kate wants to speak.
Please, Kate.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you, grandmother, for sharing your wisdom and your teachings with us. I feel your diligence and your perseverance, and I, for one, am grateful to learn of these ways. My experiences of being in circle, well, now for me, goes back like 20 years, but I know it's so powerful. The power of the circle is it's remarkable. And so, intuition, I've been letting my intuition guide me for a long time, and it leads me to beautiful teachers like you. And, I am just grateful. I feel like we're building a new world where I always hear that prayer, give us the wisdom to teach our children to love, to respect, and to be kind to one another so that we can grow with peace in mind. This was recently pointed out to me that I was meditating with Dana Lee and her olive trees, those ancient olives. They're amazing. I'd never seen them. And it was brought up that, the world has really never known peace. So as we reflect on peace, but yeah, it's like I feel like you do come from cultures that did know peace. And it somehow got, you know, but for us Europeans, it goes back to the Minoan times. It's deeply ingrained, deeply print. And I hear your little song about print, imprint right now. It's about it. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you. And I always think my intuition is right on and has me at the perfect place at the perfect time. And I know that all is in divine standard time. So too much planning and labeling and group quibbling, I say, I don't know what that's about. So they say it's all a reflection of us, what we see in the world. So I want to keep the beauty going. And I know I've come to conclude that that's all I can do is just bring the beauty to the dead feet around me, and good things will happen. Anyway, thank you for hearing me, grandmother. Thank you for giving me your time and your wisdom. Talk with you.
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, thank you for sharing in this way. And you're right. When this wave of humans first came in, and those villages that my three grandmothers lived in, it was all for survival. It was totally focused on food shelter, music, singing, and dancing. That was but pretty much the order it came in, you know. Food and shelter were right there. And then the flutes were made from the bones, and the drums were made from the interaction with the animals. And the singing and dancing was just as important as the food and shelter. And when life was that focused and that team effort was put there, it wasn't for the good of the whole or the survival, you know, it really wasn't. There was a lot of thriving in that singing and dancing, and it was for the most human level of kindness that we interacted. And I experienced this directly in my family that I grew up in. We did the talking circles. We didn't talk about them because it was illegal to talk about our ways, but they could not keep us from gathering as women and children. And the men were around us to protect us. It was generally after dark, you know, with the curtains closed and not too many people we didn't know in the house. The house was always full, overflowing. There was never fewer than 40 people there. We came together every weekend on that 50-acre farm, and it was the lowest level of kindness that the decisions were made. And the toughest one we made was to sell that farm because some of the elders needed the money. And then, of course, we did. Those who could have bought the place and given them the money and kept it the way it was, that was not the equality of the circle. The choice was made at the lowest level of kindness and need. And that was peace among everyone. And yeah, we grieved. We grieved for that farm, and we still grieve for it. Gather in our ways, and it was the kindness that was needed. Any other questions or experiences to share or comments?
Yeah, I'll pick up the feather.
Okay.
So, I'm gonna bring my little mug in here with my long antenna that I have been connected to my entire life. I've known my entire life that our hair is an antenna for our DNA structure. And I've always felt that. I've known it. It was original instructions that I came here with, not to cut my hair. I do cut my hair every 5 years because something's always told me to. I never really considered it I don't know, I've never considered it ritual or to get rid of the split ends, which there are usually an awful lot of them by that time. You know, and I don't now this has I say all my life, but there was a time in my life. The first thing I did out of high school was I went to beauty college. And that was the trade that supported me while I spent several years after that in college developing other careers. And so cutting hair got me through my music degree. And then playing music and teaching music got me through my art degree, and it continued on like that. So when I was in beauty college, I did all kinds of to my hair. I did cut it. And it was because that's what we did. You know, everybody wanted to mess with everybody's hair, and that's what we did. I also dyed my hair back then. But I would say from the time I was 22 or 23, I have never cut it or dyed it again. And I did find out that dyeing your hair is one of the worst things that you can do. It's just will absolutely destroy your neural net of your upper neural net around your your basically your scalp. Destroys the neural net around your scalp. So it's not a good thing. So, and other than that, intuition is what I'm all about. That's what has built all of this. I call it my flare of intuition. And when it comes, I mean it's like a heat. It's actually a heat. I get hot within my chest. And then everything lights up in my head. And I feel it. And I don't necessarily look at it as a gift. I've never really considered it a gift because I think everybody has it. What happened to me, I think, and how I explain it is that I started concentrating on it and I paid very deep attention to it. And I followed what I felt and I watched for signs and synchronicities that would connect one concept to another. And everything you've heard that old cliche, 3 times is a charm. Well, with me, three times is a verification. And that is what I have found, that coincidence is calculation and fate's a formula. And that's where I've been able to merge the analytical side of my existence with the artistic, to where I've been able to create and manifest things in the business world by my intuition flaring and me following my heart and my gut and tying those two together. But this has been it's been a good session, Sylvia. Okay, so yes, it's been a really cool and cool thing. Lynn, you haven't spoke yet.
I asked the question about whether Gail had cut her hair or trimmed it at all. So,
Yeah,
but
that's right.
I
You
didn't, I
did.
didn't say thank you to you, Gail, because it was a lovely session. But
Yes.
you know, I always appreciate them. So, but I should have acknowledged it. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Shonda, too, for sharing with us. And
Ursula, you have anything to add, dear?
Yes, oddly enough, such a lovely, settled and soft and still atmosphere coming in. Because I came in more than halfway through your process, and that was very noticeable, how quiet and still. And I thought, gosh, I'm in a late summer's evening, sitting in my deck chair, feeling the sun going down. That kind of feeling. So it was absolutely lovely to be in the presence of this. And yeah, and it felt very feminine. So I don't really know. I mean, you've been talking about cutting hair generally rather than just for the ladies or the women of the world, but it just felt very feminine.
thank you, Ursula. It's beautiful that you recognize that energy, because we were in the process of being centered. We were talking about the tool that allows us to balance all 4 functions. And this is what Jung developed from our medicine ways in the creation of what we know as psychology today. And we were doing it. We were actually taking the action and stepping through the process of how to do that, to create exactly the energy you felt when you came into the room. So that's beautiful feedback. Thank you so much. Reaper, did you have anything you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, I'll be happy to share. Um, I'm not able to turn my camera on this little new iPad, or it's not an iPad, it's a little tablet that I was gifted. So, I can't turn my camera on, but interestingly enough, yeah, I have understood the connection with the hair in recent years, you could say. What I found interesting was when I had my spiritual awakening, when I turned 38, 39, and was letting go of what you would say my past life. I had cut my hair, and that was actually the beginning of the end of my marriage because I had let my hair grow and grow and grow. And my husband really loved long hair. And so I'm like, it's time for me to cut my hair. I just had that intuitive knowing. And I cut my hair really, really short. And his reaction to it was uh, very interesting. I won't go into that. And I've kept my hair short ever since, even to the point where when I began my peregrination on the motorcycle, uh, I started shaving my head except for my ponytail, or what is now a dread. And so for me, it has been this interesting balance of the Eastern world, part of my indigenous with the India, Hindu, and being what's considered a what they call a holy person or a minister, a chaplain, where they keep their heads shaved because for them that keeps their crown open and clear and that clear connection to with creator and having this ponytail dreadlock that grew clear down to my tush, actually beyond my tush. She started bopping me on the back of my knees and so forth. So for me, it's been this balance of the my Native American side where you don't cut your hair and this India Hindu side of me being a minister having a shaved head. And it just totally works for me. The one thing I did not hear you share about, which I would love for you to elaborate on it, I'm not going to elaborate on it, but I will share that I knew about, oh, was it a year to 2 years ago? It's been a year ago. In December, it was a year. I knew that either my new partner or my service dog was going to be leaving me. And whoever left me first, I knew I was going to be cutting that tail off. And it turned out that it was my little service dog of 16 years. So that's how long my tail had grown for 16 years. And I did not even make it out of the veterinarian's office and I cut my tail off. And I wrapped it around my little dog. And I do carry it with me now on the motorcycle. I was told not to cremate it with him. So I'm not going to elaborate as to why we cut the hair off. I would really love to hear your explanation of why Native Americans do cut their hair when they go into the mourning process. And with that, I will mute myself. Thank you for listening and thank you for this beautiful, calm energy and presentation. Hey.
Thank you for sharing from your heart like that. I'm happy to go into that tradition of grief. And we gather those around us that will support our grief. And we do that ceremony and we actually walk to the fire. And we give our hair to the fire, acknowledging the temporary nature of life, the purification, the letting go, the state. We are in a very holy state when we are in that place of grief. We are very tuned and very close. It's as though when we do that, we are walking with a foot in each world. And we acknowledge that, and we cut the hair so that everyone we see is aware that we are in that state. It's recognized immediately. Our regalia is not decoration. It's not adornment. It's communication. We can immediately look at each other, see our experience, what we walk with, see our verb-based walk, our name that we come in with, where we are at this time in our life. And that's generally where we share our teachings from, where we are right now. And, you know, if you notice, you can see that holy place that people are in grief, especially as a sudden shock and a loss like that. And in our Salagi tradition, we wail, which is kin to the Celtic tradition of keening, because it is that grief that creates the river that the soul travels on. And the psychopomp is the one who guides the soul, and that's the energy I've always held in my family. And that's where the teachings come from, and where the relationships and the connections come from. And also the thing about cutting the hair is that we are so sensitive, so wounded, so raw in that place that we don't need the antenna. We can hardly bear the additional emphasis that brings in that first year of grief. And there we go to the edge of the forest, and we speak with all the trees and the earth. We speak with everything around us when we go to the edge of the forest, and we have our family, our friends, our true are in relationship with, keeping an ear and an eye on our grief process. When we are in that holy state, we're vulnerable, and that is the most loving place we can be, because grief is the acknowledgement of the loss of love. It's balancing the love that we've had throughout our life of relationship with that person that we've lost. And so we keep an eye on each other, we make sure we have that opportunity to wail, and we don't get caught in that energy and lose our choice. We choose when we have the strength to wail with the forest and to release that grief and the river that the soul travels on, and to help that journey for those we love in every way that our gifts make possible. We do this as community. The one who hurts the most has the loudest voice, but we're all there together. Place that we in when we walk between the worlds from that pain, and keep us in balance in that. For asking that question and bringing that topic into this discussion as well.
Thank you, sister. We are at the top of the hour. Welcome, John, and welcome, Deborah. Sylvia, sister, would you like to comment before we close?
Thank you, Gail and Freebird and everyone. That grief image is really profound for me. And the communal communication. And the haircutting image is and the piece that is the container for this talk, I went to a transitional housing unit for safe shelter in April of last year. And one of the volunteers is cuts hair for a living. And his gift to the shelter was to come and cut resident hair once a month. And that was really a gift to me. The trim that he did on my long hair has since shagged out, but and in the meantime, it continues to be a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Yeah, sweet experience to share with us. Gratitude and close our room with that
Yes, sister, let's do that.
we have today. Okay. Gratitude song with the rattles so we don't risk original sounds. Inside some life, into my life, inside the yellow, my and
Stars, grandmothers,
we share
Josh
compassion.
Sebastian,
All my
relation,
grandmother,
brothers, water is life. On the slide,
Till again, much love and gratitude to all of you.
Mother, sister, thank you.
Okay.
And as tradition in the gathering, when we close the session, we say thank you to the energy in the room. Thank you, Grandmother Gail, and thank you for the knowledge of the antenna of the soul, and also what Ahawan brought, the knowledge of shaving the head to open up the crown. Thank you, love.